Begin Self-Publishing, episode number 69. What's new on Amazon with Alex Newton.
Interested in self-publishing but don't know where to start? Want to get your book onto Amazon? Want to hold your paperback book in your hands? Learn how on the Begin Self-Publishing podcast with your host, Tim Lewis.
In this episode, I talk again to Alex Newton of K-Lytics, which is a service where they generate reports based on scouring the information on the Amazon ebook store to see which categories have a lot of competition and which categories don't. I spoke to him previously in January, so I was quite interested to have him on again to talk about what's actually changed in the Kindle store since then, and maybe to go a bit more in detail on some of the things we talked about earlier. So now over to the interview. Hi Alex, and welcome to the show.
Hi Tim, great to be back here. So hello to you.
Yes, because obviously we had you on about 9 months ago to talk about what was happening in the Amazon marketplace. Since you were last on the show, what has been the biggest new trend that you've seen in the Amazon ebooks marketplace?
Well, there are a couple of things. I mean, first from a helicopter level, the one trend that continues to maintain is the sheer supply of books. I don't remember the number I quoted when we were last time on the show, but the first thing you notice, although it has slowed a little bit, the influx of new books is still up there. So, I mean, as we talk right now, in terms of English-speaking books, we have like 3.75 million by now. So for the readers, a lot to read out there. I think you probably need 29 lifetimes to do so, and that won't be enough. And in total, it's about 4.5 million books, and we see the sheer number of books still growing with 20% a year, which is clearly outgrowing the demand. And that drives a couple of the trends within the genres, which we're going to be talking about today.
So has there been any genre that you've seen a marked decline in recently?
Well, if we start with the bad news, it has hit a couple of genres. I mean, there is let's take one example. If we go into nonfiction to start with, there's probably 2-3 things happening in nonfiction. First of all, there's still this influx of new books. So the competition is huge in nonfiction because we know it's been so easy to upload nonfiction titles. But a couple of the genres have been hit particularly hard. Take, for example, if I go back about a year ago, or last time we talked 9 months, it already started this whole subgenre of crafts, hobbies, and homes, right? Where during the big Kindle Gold Rush, every grandma was uploading her book about how to knit a frog or something like that. And these types of books took a huge dive, and I think it's a double whammy. First of all, the readers probably don't use the Kindle anymore after the hype about the device has been over to download cookbooks or how to knit type of self-help books, because it's just also the enthusiasm for the device may have been faded away a bit. The other thing is, in many of the non-fiction genres, people don't go to the Kindle and read a book about it. You go to Pinterest or much more so to YouTube, and within 2 minutes you know how to do something. So you don't have to read a textual book. So we've seen a couple of those things. There's still pockets left in non-fiction we can talk about, but I think this is the one big thing we've been seeing, that nonfiction, the influx of books is still up there, although many enthusiasts probably start seeing that it's harder and harder than ever to earn money with it at all. Second one is demand. Readers don't go to the Kindle so much more and don't put their Kindle as a recipe book into the kitchen. And I think the third one, which not many people are talking about, but I think it was a factor, is that up until when was it, 6, 7, 8 months ago, we still had some fraudulent practices, let's call it this way, on Kindle, where Amazon let people get away with, or probably Amazon didn't know at the time, but where people put a table of contents or put something into the book which caused the reader to go to the last page of the book. And Amazon had no way of telling whether these pages that were skipped were actually read or just skipped because the device does not tell Amazon. And that's how many people, especially in the nonfiction world, well, I shouldn't put blame on people in the nonfiction world. It was probably in both fiction and nonfiction, but people were tricking the system and getting page reads in Kindle Unlimited where the pages were never read. Now, Amazon heavily cracked down on this and basically banned authors from the platform who use such practices, and they also now inhibit uploading books where you have, strange table of contents or whatever. Go to the last page to retrieve your big prize, these type of things. And that's what happened. So the one big trend we've certainly seen from the bad news point of view, if we start with that one, is a big pressure on the nonfiction side of things.
Okay. What about fiction then? I mean, has anything markedly changed in the fiction side of things in the last 9 months or so?
Well, at least I think much more good news on that side. There is a huge influx of books. Also, if we go to sister websites, like Author Earnings, who do a great job at looking at some of the macro numbers of the market. And first of all, overall, indie publishers keep winning. That's the big news that continues to be the case, and that the big boys obviously try to ignore. So if we just look at the sheer market share of indie published books versus Big Five, it's still the Big Five continue to lose and the indie publishers continue to win. And these are not the numbers you get from the whatever American Association of Publishers, because it's not in their interest to quote these numbers, and they don't have these numbers because they don't have Amazon in the panel. Then within fiction, there have been a couple of things going on. There are, these indie publishers, they really found out that if they define and grow a certain niche that currently resonate in the current themes of times, that there is really money to be made if you dominate that niche, Whether it is, take for example, romance. I mean, romance, we've seen this huge amount of books out there in the romance genre, right? So first reaction would be, well, can I still make money with romance books? Well, the prices are not so good, right? But there are niches such as, for example, one which we just had a discussion in our membership group is sports-related romance. That thing, the demand just went up through the roof. And I looked at the numbers at a 15 months history. And the trend is not just attributable to now the new American football season kicking off and that sort of thing. It just is a wave, right? So all of a sudden, overall, on Amazon overall, you suddenly find books, about whatever the sexy American football player, the bad boy football player. It's just very interesting to observe. In other genres, such as, say, science fiction, you have people who now completely dominate market niches such as, it's not dystopian mainstream, but it's this, the whole preppers market. It's gone through the roof, where people just, and I'm not talking the non-fiction preppers market, which is also out there, survival books and survival kits and all that thing. But there has been a huge trend in these preppers books about series where the setting is basically we had some apocalypse of something, or you prepare for it and you survived it. So some of these things are on the back of also TV shows and upcoming series. But that is the good news for indie authors. If you really look at and also look at the TV, what is happening, there are still good pockets there to make money in as an indie author.
So if we go back to the grim picture with non-fiction, are there any categories which are still holding up on the non-fiction side?
Well, there are a couple. Also the ones where you have lots of marketing activities of the big publishers, and if I look at it, still you have a hot mainstream market, which is probably an evergreen market about personal transformation. It is competitive, but if you just look at, for example, the subcategory self-help personal transformation, on Kindle, there are about 11,500 titles in and around that category, which sounds big, but by comparison, it's actually still a pretty small market. Take as a comparison point, the biggest genre, just religion and spirituality on its whole, has like, I think, close to 400,000 titles now in it. So if we're talking anything between, 1,000 to perhaps up to 12,000 titles, that's what I would almost still consider a niche. So self-help, personal self-help, personal transformation book, how to be more successful, etc. Although it sounds like a completely beaten track, these books still sell pretty well.
I'm surprised by that, I have to say, because you think that the world is full of self-help books, but by the sounds of things, it's the religion books that are it's what the world's full of.
Yeah, obviously there are many crossovers. When is it like a pure nonfiction self-help book? When does it become a whatever inspirational religious book, etc. But the poor, I call them the classic Covey 7 Habits of Highly Successful People type of books. I mean, these books are never gonna die. Are they easy, however, to compete in as an indie author? That's where I'm actually not so sure, because these types of personal transformation books are obviously also markets that the big boys go after. So there to make it into the top is not so easy, because as you say, it's a pretty broad subgenre, right? And there are so many competing methods out there, including the religious title that say, well, you can also improve yourself not by 7 habits, but by whatever, praying to this god or that god, or doing this yoga exercise or that. So that's where I have my doubts. Overall, the sales are still very high for that, but will you be able as an indie author to cut out your piece of the pie? That's where I have my doubts.
Yeah. I think on the last show, and I've mentioned it on other shows as well, that there used to be this gardening bonsai tree category that you could basically chart in if you sold like one book. Is that still the easiest chart to chart in on the Amazon chart?
Well, let's have a look right now. I'm here in front of the database with some 3,000 subgenres. So if I sort them in ascending order by number of titles, there are actually now many new subcategories where you literally have only one title in it.
Oh.
So if you want to, here's the big tip for the listeners. If you'd like to have a number 1 best-selling title tomorrow, you should upload today a book on crafts, hobbies, and home, interior design, floors. So how to floor your home. And if you sell more than 0.2 copies a day, you will be a number 1 bestseller in that category tomorrow. Other good example, I'm seeing whether there's same, and see, by the way, this is where you see the irony of the market. It's actually quite a number of crafts, hobbies, and home related one. Another one, if you want to have there's only 2 books in the category crafts, hobbies, and home, crafts and hobbies, dried flowers. So if you know how to dry flowers, your average sale will only be 0.1 copy a day, and that will not make you rich. But if you want to boast in front of your grandmother you have a number 1 bestseller, that's the one to go for.
What's the easiest category on the fiction side to chart, just out of interest?
Fiction side, let me go down the list a little bit. Philosophy of medical, well, if you include children's book, there's, for example, in children, if you want to rank in children's book, if you go into fairy tales, folk tales and myths, and go into the subcategory African myths and tales, there are only 4 books in the category, and the sales are not very high, so that will work. Let's see whether there's any adult-related one. I would have to look. It's lots of non-fiction.
Yeah,
non-fiction stuff there.
It does seem that the non-fiction is the place to go if you want to chart and you're not actually too bothered about sales.
Exactly, and that's one thing, by the way, people often forget. What is the business model for the non-fiction indie author? And here I often talk with people about, you have to distinguish whether you want to see your Kindle book as a source of income or a source of authority. And these are 2 entirely different things, because say if you had a blog, the number one blog in the world about the example we just had about crafts, hobbies, and home interior design floors, right? Which is probably a subject the two of us would never write a book in, right? But imagine you had like the blog that dominates that thing, and you had on that blog post you had all the articles about the 50 best ways of flooring to do the tiles on the floor and all these sort of things, and you had a YouTube channel on that, and you had affiliate products on it, you had whatever downloadable content and examples, and you had a contract with an interior design magazine, about a column. If you then say, well, I have 3 books on Kindle about floors and they're all number ones, perfect. So I think what we mustn't forget is that there's still a good side to this whole thing. The Kindle world still allows you in many of these, very, very narrow sub-niches to rank your book, be a number one bestseller. And since Amazon calls them bestseller lists, you're totally legitimate in saying I'm a number one Amazon best-selling author, full stop. And there you have authority, and that authority may help you with the monetization of your blog or whatever other thing you do, whether it's an online course or a magazine, even offline things, right? If you have I keep telling, we had, for example, the bonsai gardening example last time, where we said, well, all these gardening and horticulture book, they are not selling a lot, but they may be easy to rank in. Now, if you are even if you are the local florist and gardener, and you had in front of, in your window a display of, here is my number one best-selling book, it would give your shop or whatever your profession is, give you more authority. And that's what people forget, that there is this indirect monetization based on the authority, not necessarily the direct income that a Kindle book can give you.
Yeah, well, I think they'd be switching over to dry flowers now, wouldn't they, or whatever that category.
You definitely should do so. And I can give you, off the line, I will give you a list of 10 other ones, and you can toss a coin and make a new career.
Yeah. So on the other end of the scale, what is the hottest category in the Kindle store at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, here we are obviously back to the famous discussion. How do we define hot? Do we define hot by just saying the absolute number of sales, right? Or do we say, well, royalty is a function of price times sales, so taking into account the sales level? But if we kept things simple, and then we can go to the more sophisticated measures where we discussed last time, where we actually put the level of sales at least in relation to the level of competition, and go for those ones where you still have high sales but at a reasonable amount of competition. We can talk about this in a second. But overall, the story has not much changed on the macro level, if you will. Romance is still the number one major genre on Kindle by a long shot, followed by mystery, thriller, suspense, and then science fiction and fantasy. I think then the next one is teen and young adult, and then that is what makes the top of the market. And within those, each of these have about between 60 and 90 subcategories. And within those, there the trick is to look at, well, where are the hot pockets? And we can talk about some of them. If we, for example, go into the very big genre, if we go into romance, as an example, I mean, here the big question is, again, do you want to compete against many and thus have a higher sales potential, or do you want to go into markets where there are only, say, up to 2,000 books in the category, but still very reasonable sales? And if we took that as a measure, that is what in K-Lytics we call the hot sells. These would be book markets where the level of competition is still below 2,000 titles, so very small, but where the sales are still pretty high in relation to it. Here in romance, just to give you an example, the one where we did a special seminar on is still clean and wholesome romance, where you have only about 1,300 titles in the category. But on average, across the top 20 titles in this category, the overall sales rank out of more than 3.5 million English books, the average across the top 20 in this subcategory would still be a sales rank of around 3,000, which is still very high up there, right? You can easily make 20 to 40 sales per day in such a category. Another one would be, for example, Gothic romance, a very defined niche where whatever people have the people who are into Gothic, less than 1,500 titles in the category and very, very high sales. Also, historical romance is still doing extremely well in that respect. If we go into specific historical romance sub-niches, such as Ancient World, for example, currently doing extremely well, as said, measured sales versus the level of competition.
I mean, obviously, on Kindle, you can put your book into several categories. So I think probably if people got hold of one of your reports and purchased it or whatever, they could look for, say, a very low competition, small category to start with, but also have other categories that maybe if their book was, even if they, I mean, I'm not necessarily suggesting people do write a book to just fit in the right categories, but
yes.
They could do something along those lines where they have one category to start off with and then they have bigger categories until they get to the most lucrative but hardest to get into category.
Yes, and this is also a good point to at least make the comment. I had very interesting debates with authors about the very topic. I think we touched upon it last time, but it's become almost like a philosophical debate where I talk to authors and I just did interviews asking them, hey, do you do any research before you commit yourself to a full-blown manuscript or book project? And it's fair to say I had about 15% of authors I interviewed who literally attacked me personally. Can you imagine? Who attacked me saying in a very antagonistic fashion, how do you even dare propose to me, an author, the artist, what to write? Well, I was almost like, whoa, why are you saying this? Wow, I just write what's in me, and then I worry about the marketing later. So I said, okay, good. But so there are, and I recognize this, there are authors out there, artists who say, I could not care less what the market is or what the readers is out there. I just write what I write, and if it flies, it's great. If it doesn't, okay, it doesn't. I totally acknowledge that. That approach is creative. It's probably self-therapeutic on top of it. So that's the one kind of authors out there, and that's fair enough. Now, the intention of my data has never been to totally twist people around. And now, as said before, have a Gothic romance authors write a crafts, hobbies, and floors, how to floor your home book just because it's easier to rank in. No, the purpose of my data is, say, help gently steer the creative effort towards those areas where I'm not even saying I can guarantee success in any way. Nothing would be further from the truth. But to gently steer the creative effort and the author's time and resources towards areas where at least the odds of success are higher, or in some cases significantly higher than in other areas of the same genre. So, I mean, take science fiction, take romance, take mystery, thriller, suspense. There are pockets in there where probably the odds of success are 50 times higher than in other pockets of the same genre. And that's the purpose of my data.
Okay, so if we go back to the Gothic romance example, you've got an author who say he's thinking of writing a romance book. What would be if they gave you two choices and one of them was Gothic romance, what would be the choice that would be the worst the other way in terms of a subgenre in romance?
Well, let's have a look. It would probably be one where you have, an outright, a very slow niche, or you go for like a big mainstream market that is just not good, right? So Romance is actually a good example because of almost all of them still rank pretty well. For example, what's surprising, some of the categories that are reserved for the big series publishers like Harlequin, they have almost like their reserved categories. I'm not even sure you can get in there, but if you go into something like romance series, Harlequin Desire, it's just not selling well. But let's have a look at those categories where, if we just sort it the other way around and say, where is the sales to competition ratio the lowest? So it's either the highest competition or the lowest sale in Rome. And if we take all those, there's many in these types of categories, by the way. Then here, the one, for example, where it's getting more and more difficult is the whole lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual subgenre. That one, for example, if we look at the trend, it seemed that Kindle was a platform for, say, gay and lesbian authors to find a channel and, whatever, if when there are gay and lesbian people out there who haven't outed themselves, it's just on your Kindle device, nobody else reads it, it's not out in the open. That may have been the factor or may not have been, but that is one where we've seen a huge upward trend over like 20 months, and now it's stalled. And the reason it has stalled is because the influx of new titles was so huge, so incredibly huge. I mean, every month you had literally thousands of new books in this romance category coming online. So that by now, a couple of months later, there's 30,000 of these books on Kindle. So whilst the top is still selling quite well, the competition has become so huge that unless you have a huge marketing engine or a brand name, it will be very, very hard in such a thing.
So, putting yourself in front of a crystal ball, what are your predictions for the future of the Kindle market?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I still do hope that at some point in time, Amazon will intervene in a certain way, more than they have so far, in putting in a quality stage gate or even doing a cleanup on what is on the platform. Because I feel that if I talk and interview readers, not even authors, Kindle readers, you do get the feedback, about Kindle Unlimited, where many readers start saying, my God, it's excuse my word, it's rubbish, I have this, and it seems to me that the user experience, the reader experience on Kindle has deteriorated because of that relentless influx of non-quality assured books. So one prediction, if I dare make one, which is not entirely related to the market, that I think Amazon will and has to at some stage put in some quality control, because obviously reviews that range from a 1 star or 0 stars, if you don't have reviews, to 5 stars is not enough differentiation for a reader who goes into a subgenre that suddenly has 250,000 books on it to make a choice, right? So that is one prediction. I think the other one is we will continue to see the indie author succeed on this thing, because the indie author, to me, still seems much more agile in sensing trends and answering to those trends. An indie author, watching a TV series or looking at the schedule of what are the new TV series coming online, and hey, can I make an adaptation of this in a book series? Until the business case is vetted by in a big publishing companies, 7 months go by and nothing's happening. So this is why I think the indie publishers continue to win. But we do see, and I had a recent conversation with another couple of authors on this, we do see a certain, almost like, and we talked about it, in like industrialization of the 1 or 2 or 5 man publishing company, where you really have to start saying, okay, I'm an indie, not just an indie author, I'm an indie publisher. That means whether I like it or not, I have to line up resources to do the marketing, I have to line up resources for the quality control, etc. So although we're talking still about the indie author, I think the winners are going to be the indie publishers. And these are those ones who really start running this as a business and organizing themselves almost like a big publishing firm, but in a microscopic scope, obviously. So whilst whatever the big 5 publishing company may have a department of 20 people doing social media, well, you may have your 3 people on Fiverr who do the same thing. You know what I mean? So and of course, I know many people do it, but the question is, do you really have a system and really come up with processes that continue, what is my exact checklist for when I launch a book? These are the 37 things that have to happen across business functions, from finance to marketing to sales to distribution and obviously the prior book production process. I think this is what we're going to see. I call it the little indie publisher industrial revolution.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the analogy of saying it's like the gold rush. So I think you're more favourable to the oil analogy, aren't you, in terms of people striking oil?
Yeah, I do know that everybody talks about the Kindle Gold Rush 1.0, 2.0, and you're right. It's been the gold rush, and that's the right analogy. But when it now comes to making money on Kindle, I personally always use the analogy of digging for oil, where you have, the big corporations. They have the technology, they have whatever, the sonar system, this system, that system. So how to drill for oil is a whole science, how to explore for it, how to find it. And I think it's a bit the same way. And that's by all means also why we're offering our service to the indie publishers out there, to provide some technology to make it easier to find the pockets of residual oil or gold, because they are out there. And I mean, I had one client, we just talked the other day and said, well, allow me this very private question, but with this, Roman subgenre, well, how much money do you still make a month? And she says, well, I write 1 or 2 books a month and I make $18,000 a month. I said, well, I take that. So it is still possible, right? Is it possible for everyone? Probably not, but it is still possible. And like in any art, the ones who really go at it with a quality attitude, with a good marketing around it, it still can be done.
Yeah. For those people who can't remember from the previous show, how do people find out about you and K-Lytics?
Oh, it's still the same, so very easy. Just visit us on the website. It's K-Lytics, like in analytics.com, K-Lytics.com. And from there, you also get a link to the blog with lots of free resources. And I welcome everyone to have a look, of course. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thanks for being on the show.
It was a pleasure. Talk to you next time, Tim. Bye now.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please stop by iTunes and rate and leave a review. This helps make the show more visible. For free resources, show notes, and other helpful content, join the community at beginselfpublishing.com.